step on already.
Hey, good morning and welcome everyone. We are here at Making the Law Work for the People on WIDU 1600, sponsored by Brent Adams and Associates. My name is Amy Wabike, and I'm an attorney with Brent Adams and Associates. We are a law firm that is here to help you with some of the legal issues you may encounter, from workers' compensation to disability claims to compensation for personal injuries and various other situations. We hope you'll give us a call when you need assistance. Our motto here is, don't hesitate, call the 8. That's 910-888-8888. Once again, 910-888-8888. And we have several offices across the state of North Carolina that you can go to if you need help. Our main office is located at 119 Lucknow Square in Dunn, North Carolina. We're also in Fayetteville at 1300 Pamela Drive, Suite A. And our Raleigh office is located at 8222 Creedmoor Road, which is conveniently near 540 and 440. But even if you're not near one of our offices, or you can't stop by, you can still give us a call anytime, and we'll be happy to see how we can help. So just remember, don't wait, call the 8, 910-888-8888. Now, Mr. Adams has been practicing law for over 50 years, and during this time, he's written several books, including 10 Costly Mistakes That Can Wreck Your North Carolina Car Case, How to Get Top Dollar for Your Workers' Compensation Claim, and The Truth About Medical Malpractice Claims. These books are available on Amazon. However, you can also call our office, tell us you're a faithful listener of WIDU 1600, and we will follow up with a copy of one of Mr. Adams' books. So now for our session, I'm going to go through common questions that I see come up every single day from people injured across the state about what to do when there's been a car wreck and how to handle an insurance claim, and just questions about how the whole legal process works and what you should do. So to start off with, I want to talk about what to do after you've been in a car wreck. One of the biggest questions I get that I see every single day is, what should I do after a car wreck? This is such an important topic because the decisions you make in the first few hours and days after a crash can have a major impact, not just on your health, but also on your ability to protect yourself legally and financially later on. A lot of people have never been in a wreck before, let alone a serious one. They're shaken up, they're stressed. Maybe you're in a situation where you've been in a wreck and you've got your kids in a car, traffic is piling up behind you, you had somewhere you had to be, maybe you had to go to work, maybe you're trying to drop those kids off, maybe you had a doctor's appointment. And so there's always a lot of panic and confusion there, and just a lot of not knowing what to do first. So I'm going to walk you through step by step what you can do after you've been in a car wreck. And the very first thing is simple. You want to check for injuries and call 911. And I'll say this, even if the wreck doesn't seem catastrophic at first, even if it seems, thankfully, that no one's seriously hurt, everyone's going to be able to walk away fine, it is still a good idea to get law enforcement to the scene and get a police report made. Because what often happens is that at the scene, everybody's very polite, everybody is, very agreeable, saying, oh yes, I was at fault, yes, I'm so sorry, yes, I didn't see you, that was my bad. But then, 2 weeks later, and let's say you haven't gotten a police officer out there, you haven't made a crash report, the insurance company gets involved, and then suddenly the story starts to change completely. Now this other person might be saying, well, actually, maybe you changed lanes. Maybe you were the one who stopped too suddenly. Maybe you were partially at fault. Maybe you came out of nowhere and I just couldn't see you. And in North Carolina, fault and responsibility matters a lot. North Carolina has a very harsh rule called contributory negligence. And what that means is that if the insurance company can convince a jury that a plaintiff in this case, an injured person, if they can convince the jury that you were even slightly at fault or slightly responsible for causing the wreck at any time of the accident, then it can completely stop you from recovering anything. That is the very strict North Carolina rule, and so that means if a jury finds you any amount at fault, they are not allowed to give you anything if they're following the North Carolina law. So that is why evidence matters so much. Police reports matter, photos matter, witnesses matter, and that's why first steps when you've been in a car wreck, I always say, check yourself for injuries, call 911, get a police officer out there, and get them to make a report, because that's the kind of evidence you're going to need to really prove what happened later down the line, after people have gone their separate ways and, witnesses have driven off. You're going to want that information. Now, after you make sure everyone's safe, the police are on their way, the next thing you want to do is, also gather your own information. It's really important to get that police report, but you also want to get any information that you can on your own. And I know this sounds obvious, but you would be surprised how many people forget this because it is so easy to overlook it when you're nervous, when you're overwhelmed, when you've just been in a wreck. But if you can, you want to collect driver's license information, insurance information, take down a license plate number. If there are any witnesses around, definitely just get them to leave their name, their phone number on a piece of paper, and take photographs of everything. When I do say everything, I mean pictures of anything you can. All the vehicles involved in the wreck. Take a picture of the damage, the roadway, the skid marks, any debris that's left in the road, the traffic lights. Get a good picture of what the weather conditions were at the time and any visible injuries you might have. Because what sometimes seems unimportant at the scene can later become incredibly important in your case. Maybe there's standing water on the road. Maybe there's poor lighting. Maybe, one of the traffic signals was down, and that can make a big difference. Maybe a stop sign was missing. Maybe from one angle, the damage to your car doesn't look as bad. These are all things that are important and very helpful to get. And after you've been in a wreck, after everybody leaves the scene, there's just no way to go back later and recreate that scene exactly as it was. Which is why I always say, check yourself for injuries, call 911, get the police on the way, and then gather that information and evidence that you can. And another thing that people don't think about and that I really do want to stress is that if there are witnesses standing around, yes, try to get their names and phone numbers if you can, because an independent witness can make a huge difference when the insurance company is arguing about who is responsible. And a lot of people do stop, but they might not wait for a police officer to show up. So if you see them standing around at the scene, go ahead and just have them leave a note on your phone, write it down on a piece of paper for you, and it can make a huge help for your case down the line. Now, let's talk about one of the biggest mistakes that I have seen after a car wreck, and that's more about the medical treatment. So let's say you've been in a car wreck, the police have come out, they've taken their police report, you've done a lot of your own gathering, taken pictures, gotten down some witnesses' names. You've collected all the information you can from the wreck itself. Now, afterwards, it's time to think about your treatment for your injuries if you've been hurt. And big mistake I see is people refusing to get medical treatment when they are hurt. And this happens all the time. Someone will get rear-ended. Their adrenaline can be pumping. Maybe you just want to go home. Maybe you have other things you need to do. Maybe you don't want a big ambulance bill. So a lot of people will say, I'm okay. I'll tough it out. I'll sleep it off. It'll be fine tomorrow. But then the next morning they wake up, can barely turn their neck, and they're in a lot of pain. Their back is locking up. Their shoulder hurts. They have headaches. And that's because adrenaline can mask a pain of a traumatic event. For example, I had a client from long ago who was in a car wreck, and that wreck absolutely just, almost turned his car into like a crushed soda can, but amazingly, miraculously, thankfully, he walked out of there. Ambulance came and checked him out. He said, "Oh, no, I'm fine. My wife's on the way. She's going to take me home." He went home later that evening, had to drive him back to the emergency room. It turned out he had broken several ribs, but he was just so high on adrenaline, he didn't realize at the moment, how bad his injuries were. So that's why I say, after you've, had the police on their way, taken some, stock of like how bad your injuries are, it's always still a good idea to have the EMS come check you out if you've got any concerns, if there's any kind of signs that you're wrecked, put a lot of impact and force on your body. You're going to want to have an ambulance check you out, and I would suggest going to the emergency room just to make sure nothing's broken, make sure nothing's bleeding inside, just for your own peace of mind. Because not every injury shows up immediately, and especially what we call soft tissue injuries, which are more like injuries to your muscle tissue, those can worsen over days, and a concussion may not be fully present at the time. Inflammation can build up. So if you're in a wreck, go get checked out, and if you're hurting, go get checked out. Even if the doctor just gives you some pain medication and tells you to go home and rest, you now have a record showing that you were in pain and that you were in a wreck that was significant enough to put a lot of impact on your body. So just like having a police report is an important record to show, how the wreck happened, getting checked out by the doctor is an important record to show how your injury happened. Now, another thing that listeners should understand is this. Insurance companies pay very close attention to treatment gaps. Another thing I always talk about with my new clients, and one thing I always talk about with people who have been in wrecks, is the importance of avoiding those treatment gaps. Because insurance companies, they love them. If somebody waits, 2 weeks or waits a month before seeing a doctor, the insurance company, this just gives them a license to argue, well, maybe something else caused this person's pain. Maybe something else caused this person's injury. Maybe it wasn't serious if they waited so long to get checked out. Maybe it happened while they were at work. They got hurt. Maybe they're just exaggerating what their injuries are. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have a case, but it can make your case more difficult. And that's another reason why talking with an attorney early can help you and anyone else who's been in a car wreck or in some kind of injury situation, help you avoid common mistakes, which is why we say, don't wait, call the 8, 910-888-8888. If you've been injured in a car wreck or any other kind of accident, or you have a Social Security or workers' compensation issue you're struggling with, don't hesitate. Give us a call at 910-888-8888. Another issue that comes up is with recorded statements. So this is after a wreck has happened, and if you don't have an attorney on your side, one trap I see people falling into is giving recorded statements to the other driver's insurance company, before they've really spoken to an attorney and had an attorney give them some advice and look at their case. Because a lot of people, for the average person, never been in a serious car wreck, maybe never been in any car wreck at all, and most people just going about their day, just trying to live their lives. So when they've been in a car wreck, they think, well, I don't have anything to hide. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just minding my business. So now this insurance company is calling me. They want to know what happened. So I'll just tell them the truth. I'll just explain what happened. But what they don't realize is that insurance adjusters are trained to ask you questions in ways that can minimize your claim or can even, destroy your claim completely or make it very challenging for you to recover anything. For example, they might ask a very common question that I see insurance adjusters ask is, maybe they got your initial statement of the facts, and now a day or two later they're calling back and saying very nicely, very sweetly, with Southern charm a lot of times, oh, how are you doing? I'm checking in on you. Are you feeling better today? You are feeling better today, right? And, you being polite, not thinking much of it, you might say, well, yeah, I feel a little better today. And then 6 months later, they pull up this recording and they use that against you. They say, oh, well, we have your recorded statement that just 2 days after the wreck, you said you were improving. You were feeling better when we asked you. You said that you were getting better. Or they could ask you, would you say that the collision was a minor collision? And, maybe at the time, visually, it just looked like a bent-in bumper. And so you might say, yeah, I suppose it was a minor collision. So now they get to put down the file, claimant describes this as a minor accident. But then you might get that same car into a body shop. Once they start taking it apart, once they actually look at the frame, that car could have a lot more damage. That car could be totaled. Or even if there is minimal damage, that doesn't necessarily represent how much force that wreck put on your body when you were inside the car. So your words matter so much, your statements matter, and you need to remember, after a car wreck, insurance adjusters can sound friendly, and many of them are friendly people, but their job is still to protect the insurance company's money. That's their role. And your role is to protect yourself and your family. So that's why you want to be very careful about what you say. And then when you've been in a wreck, if you have any questions, call an attorney. Because consultations with our office, they are free. If you don't know whether you should see a doctor, if you have an insurance company that is pressuring you, calling you, hounding you for a statement, if you're confused about rental cars or medical bills or, just how to handle a claim, before talking to the insurance company, don't hesitate. Call the 910-888-8888. That's 910-888-8888. So now we've talked a bit about what to do right after a wreck happens, calling the police, getting an officer out there, getting a crash report, taking down witnesses, taking photos. We've talked a little bit about, how important that initial treatment is and how important it is to avoid gaps and avoid giving statements to an insurance company and giving us a call when you've been in a wreck. So another thing I want to talk about is something people misunderstand about wrecks. Basically, the severity of the wreck and the impact of the damage. A lot of people think that, if the damage to my car isn't huge, then I probably don't have a case. There's no point in me calling an attorney. And honestly, it's one of the biggest misconceptions I see, because the reality is some of the most painful and long-lasting injuries happen in what insurance companies like to call low-impact collisions. I've seen people suffer herniated discs, shoulder injuries, concussions, chronic headaches, nerve pain from crashes where the bumper damage, it didn't look all too bad. And the reason for that is very simple. The human body is not built to absorb a lot of sudden force. Your car has bumpers, packed in there with styrofoam or, some kind of absorbent material. Your car is made out of metal. It's got safety systems. But your neck, your spine, your rotator cuff, your brain, those are not built to handle being suddenly jerked back and forward. And when a car hits you, it doesn't take too much speed or force to really make a pretty big impact, on your body there in the driver or the passenger seat. So I think sometimes insurance companies try to condition people into believing, well, if the car doesn't look destroyed, then nobody could really be hurt. But that's just not how the body works. In fact, some of the hardest cases emotionally are the ones where somebody is genuinely injured, but the property damage photos, don't look too bad. They don't look very dramatic. And I'll give you an example of another client I had of mine, represented a woman who was in what I think most people would describe as, a moderate rear end collision. She's sitting at a red light, traffic stopped, and then another driver looked down at their phone, checking their map, maybe checking a message, and then rear-ended her. Just didn't look up in time and see that everyone else was stopped. So when you looked at the cars afterwards, the damage didn't look too bad. Her rear bumper, and trunk was bent in, but it wasn't a giant mangled up crash scene. So one of the first things she told us was, I don't even know if I should call an attorney because my car doesn't look that bad. And she started second guessing herself. She thought, maybe I'm just sore. Maybe, I slept the wrong way. Maybe it'll go away. I'll just sleep it off over the weekend. It'll be better. And so that's what she tried to do. She tried to push through it. She kept going to work. She kept taking care of her family. She kept ignoring the pain, just hoping with some pain meds it would get better and go away on its own. But then over the next, couple of weeks, the next month, that neck stiffness, didn't go away. It didn't get better. It started radiating down into her arm. She was getting headaches, frequently that weren't going away. And then she was getting numbness, tingling all down into her fingers. And eventually, when we did speak to her, when we did get her set up and get a case started for her, she went and got an MRI, and that showed that she had a disc injury in her neck. And that's what I see for a lot of car wrecks. It's that the injuries, they're not immediate. They're not just like a sudden explosion of pain. It's not always a fractured bone that you see right off the bat. Sometimes they unfold very slowly. Your muscles can tighten. Your nerves can become irritated, especially if you've got an injured disc that's pushing on them. And people often delay treatment because they think, well, if I was really hurt, I would know immediately. And that's just not always true. So I think that story and then the other clients, sometimes even when you do have a very obvious catastrophic injury like a fracture, I have even seen people walk those off and go home and not even realize until that night or the next day that they were so badly injured. So that's why I always say, if you've been in a car wreck, go ahead, take yourself to an emergency room. If you've got any questions at all, feeling any kind of pain at all, just have a doctor check you out, follow up with your primary care doctor, keep an eye on how your body's feeling and how it's developing. And of course, talk to an attorney. Consultations with their office are free, so it never hurts you to give an attorney a call and just see what they think about your case and, see what we can do for you. So once again, if you've been injured in a car wreck, if you've got a Social Security question, if you've got a workers' compensation claim, anything, any kind of injury that you have a question about, don't hesitate, call the 8. That's 910-888-8888.
You done got a praise step on already.
This is Dr. Ann T. Newell, pastor of the Soul Harvest Apostolic Church at 135 North Main Street in Spring Lake, and you're listening to Wake Up.
With less than 100 days remaining until the November midterm elections, candidates, political parties, and advocacy groups across North Carolina are intensifying efforts to connect with voters in a cycle expected to feature several closely watched races. More than $34 million in federal funding is headed to Western North Carolina to support workforce development and long-term recovery from Helene. Speaking with reporters, Senate Majority Leader John Thune says he would like to see the SAVE Act pass, but it has not had enough support. Downtown Winston-Salem is awash in purple as the 2026 International Black Theater Festival kicked off with an opening night gala at the Benton Convention Center, marking the start of a week-long celebration. Members of the Stakeholder Advisory Committee for UNC Chapel Hill's North Carolina Project North toured the future campus yesterday.
I'm Jamie Monticelli, WIDU Radio News. Cumberland County, in partnership with the City of Fayetteville government and community partners, will open cooling centers today. Residents without access to AC may visit a cooling center during normal business hours to stay cool and safe. When temperatures are high and extreme heat is in the forecast, remember to drink plenty of water, stay in air-conditioned spaces when possible, avoid direct sun exposure during peak heat hours, limit outdoor activities, and take frequent breaks in the shade. Cumberland County Schools is seeking trusted and enthusiastic parents, guardians, and community members to serve as CCS Family Ambassadors. CCS Family Ambassadors serve as important connectors among families, schools, and the district. Family Ambassadors share family-friendly information, guide families to the appropriate CCS staff and resources, and support family engagement efforts at their schools and in their attendance areas. From WIDU Radio, I'm Jamie Monticelli.
Your Tuesday forecast could see some late morning and early afternoon showers, and if that indeed does come to fruition, it would reduce our severe storm chance later in the day. But that chance does exist between about 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. High temperatures today, 85 to 90 degrees. We're quiet overnight with temperatures dropping into the lower 70s, and we'll be in the mid to upper 80s Wednesday, lows in the low to mid 60s heading into Thursday morning. I'm meteorologist Chris Michaels in the NCN Weather Center.
Bless the Lord. I'm Dr. Auntie Newell, pastor of the Soul Harvest Apostolic Church, the church not just there in the community, but there for the community of Spring Lake, North Carolina. We're looking for more than a few good men and women to join the team. Iron sharpeneth iron. We may have what you need. You may have what we need. Catch the vision. Join the team. Join Wake Up.
Hi, this is Apostle Bernard L. Whitfield, Jr. of Righteous God Ministries, 348 Old Wilmington Road, 910-223-7591. The pastor is Phyllis Vernell Whitfield. Our service time is 9:45 Bible study, 11 a.m. service. Tuesday night Bible study begins at 6:45. And remember, come as you are. You don't have to clean up to get up, but come see us, and we'll be there for you. God bless you. Heaven smile upon you.
Are you tired of living with back pain, neck pain, or constant tension? At Grace Creek Chiropractic and Wellness Center, Dr. Joyce Smith-Jones and her caring team are here to help you feel your best. We're committed to providing personalized chiropractic solutions for your unique needs, from headaches to muscle tightness and beyond. Visit us at 5106 North Carolina Highway 87 South, Suite 104, Fayetteville, or call 910-703-3386, 910-703-3386 to schedule your appointment today. Grace Creek Chiropractic and Wellness Center, helping you move better, feel better, and live better.
This is Pastor Steve McMillan of the New Life Covenant Fellowship, 362 Neville Street in your God bless city of Fayetteville. You're listening to Wake Up.
This is Pastor Neil of the New Covenant Christian Faith Church Ministries, 5427 Murchison Road, and I am proud to be a member of Wake Up.
Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Heavy load, heavy load. I got rid of my heavy load. Say it again, heavy load, y'all. Heavy load, yeah. I got rid of my heavy load. Look at that lady right there.
Okay. Welcome back to Making Law Work for the People here on WIDU 1600, sponsored by Brent Adams and Associates. Once again, my name is Amy Wabike, and I'm an attorney with Brent Adams and Associates. We're a law firm here to help you with some of the legal issues you may encounter. We handle workers' compensation, disability claims, and compensation for personal injuries. So we hope you'll give us a call when you need assistance. Mr. Brent Adams has practiced law in North Carolina for over 50 years, and he has a great team of amazing attorneys that work with him here, and he has helped countless North Carolinians through difficult times. We have convenient offices located across North Carolina in Dunn, Fayetteville, and Raleigh. And if you mention you are a faithful WIDU listener, you can get one of Mr. Adams' books, including How to Handle Your North Carolina Car Wreck Claims, Workers' Compensation Claims and How to Handle Them, and The Truth About Medical Malpractice Claims. Our motto here is, don't hesitate, call the 8, 910-888-8888. So if you have a question about an injury you've been in, about a workers' compensation case, about a Social Security disability claim, don't hesitate, give us a call. Remember, that's the 8, 910-888-8888. So for the first half of our show, I spoke about what you should do after a car wreck and talked about some common mistakes that you can avoid to protect yourself. Now, for the second half of today's show, I want to answer some practical questions people have after a wreck. Because after a wreck, it's not just about getting the police report and just about getting that initial ER visit. There's also questions like, how long is my injury claim going to take? How do I get my car fixed? Who pays for the rental? So let's talk through some of those questions that may come up after that first initial police report, that initial trip to the emergency room, and just after that initial moment of the wreck. And as always, if you have any questions about the injury side of your case, don't hesitate, call the 800-910-888-8888. So a question I get many times and that I hear a lot from clients all the time is, why is my case taking so long? How long is this going to take? And honestly, this is a frustration that I think everybody goes at through some point during a personal injury case because, oftentimes from an injured person's perspective, as I said before, average person has never been in a serious car wreck before. And for a lot of people, they've never been in any car wreck at all. And most people are just going about their day, just trying to get to work, just trying to, get maybe to school and pick up their kids, just trying to go to grocery shopping, just living their lives and just trying to go about their day when suddenly they'll have a driver who pulls out in front of them. They'll have a driver who rear ends them. They'll have someone running a red light who T-bones them in an intersection. And so for the typical person, they think, well, I was just minding my business. This wreck happened months ago now. The other driver was clearly at fault. So, why isn't this resolved already? How long is this going to take? And I understand that frustration, especially because, after a wreck, it can pause so much of your life. Injuries can take you out of work. They can keep you from, driving, especially if your car has been wrecked. You have to look for another car. But just because there's been a wreck, that doesn't mean that life gets paused. People still have bills, rent, car payments. You still have missed time from work, and you still have medical appointments you need to get to, all while being physically hurt and injured and trying to now deal with this car insurance claim. So I want to talk a bit about why these cases can take longer than people expect, how the process is actually set up, for better or for worse, and what that looks like if you've been in a car wreck. So first off, one thing I see people often ask me is, hey, it's obvious I wasn't at fault for this wreck. I wasn't responsible. I do need help paying for my medical bills. Can't the insurance company, just send me some money now to help me get that treatment? And while I agree with them, that would make a lot of sense and it would help out a lot of people who've been in a car wreck. That's just not how the process is set up in North Carolina. In North Carolina, the way an insurance claim will work is that, once a claim is open, there's basically only one time when a payment will go out, at least for the injury portion, and that will be at the end of your claim. Essentially, what we do is we submit all the medical bills and all the medical treatment. The insurance company will review that, and then they will make an offer. And then we will negotiate and get you the best offer, that pays for your medical bills, your pain and suffering, time missed from work, and any other kind of physical damages that need to be included in that. But that is all at one time. So basically you get one crack at the bat, one shot at it, and then there will be one payment. So there's not payments over time. It's different for like Social Security disability and for workers' compensation, which can kind of pay you while you're out of work. A personal injury claim is just different that way, and that it only gets, one payment at the end, which is why it's so important to reach out to an attorney, let them know what kind of treatment you're getting, let them know what your doctors are saying, and let them know if you change anything in your treatment. Because, as your attorney, we order your medical bills and your medical records. We get all of that for you, but I can't order those records for you if I don't know what treatment you're getting. So if your treatment changes, let's say, you were doing physical therapy, but then your physical therapist says, hey, I think you should go see a specialist. I think you should go back to the orthopedic doctor and get reevaluated. And maybe that orthopedic doctor says, you know what, I think you've got a concussion here. I want to send you to a neurologist. Make sure you let us know. Let us know if something changed in your treatment. Let us know who that neurologist is so we can make sure we get those records for you, because that's everything, all the evidence we need to show to the insurance company to fight for your case and fight for your injuries. And that's also one of the big reasons that these claims can take a long time, because there's no set date. There's no, well, once we get the police report, then you can be paid. Once we prove that you were responsible for the wreck, then you can be paid. It just really depends on how long your treatment lasts, on how long it takes to really see what your injuries are and what kind of treatment you're going to need for them. And I spoke in the first half of the hour about how injuries after a car wreck, they're not always immediately apparent. There can be things like bulging discs in your spine, along your neck, along your back, that can cause radiating pain, that can aggravate your nerves, and those can take some weeks or some months to show up. So you want to make sure that we really have a good grasp on your injuries before we try to settle anything in your case. And now there are some situations where, maybe you have a broken bone and the injury is just so straightforward and, nothing else comes up, and that might reach a conclusion faster, but it really just comes down to a case-by-case basis. There is no one timeline that fits every single case, because every single case is different, every single wreck is different, and every single injury and person is different too. So it really just depends on how your treatment goes and how your body feels before we have an idea of how long your case and your claim is going to take. So that is one of the things that comes up, something that can cause frustration for people after they've been injured in a wreck, is just kind of not knowing how long that process is going to take. But once again, that's why if you've been injured in a wreck, it's important to reach out to an attorney, let them guide you through the process, give us a call. Don't hesitate, call the 8-910-888-8888. So one of the other questions I want to talk about that we had mentioned was, how do I get my car fixed? Who pays for the rental? Oh, but first I should say, sorry, I forgot. Going back to, why do claims take so long? How does that claim process work? We were talking about injuries and making sure we really have a good idea of what your injuries are and what kind of treatment you're going to need for those injuries. That's another reason why it's important to talk to an attorney. There are some things we can do on our end to, help you. If you're struggling with getting health insurance applied to your bills, if you're not sure where the best place to go, depending on what health insurance you have, if you don't have any health insurance, that's one of the things that we can look at and see if we can find something that works for you, which is another reason why, if you've been hurt in a wreck, give us a call. Don't hesitate. Call the 8-910-888-8888. Now, for the other questions we had brought up about cars, something that comes up a lot of times, very often, if people have been in a wreck, there's a lot of questions about, what happens with my car? So as far as how do I get my car fixed? Now, at our firm, we do handle the bodily injury portion, but I can still give some advice for, what happens with the property damage portion. So first thing off the bat is it's important to know that when you've been in a car wreck, there's basically two claims that can happen here: the bodily injury and the property damage. So you can get your car fixed, you can get the property damage part taken care of, but still keep your bodily injury claim open. So I just have a lot of times when something will come up, I'll have a client who's been in a car wreck, maybe their first car wreck or the first serious one, and they'll, have done a good job, gotten a police officer out there, done all the investigation, called an attorney, didn't give a statement to the insurance company, and now they're getting their treatment, seeing what their doctor says about their injuries. But then they will give me a call and be, concerned or scared that, hey, the insurance company reached out to me about, totaling my car or about giving me a rental, and they want me to sign an agreement for the rental car, for the total loss of my car, and I'm just worried. Does that mean if I get my car fixed or if I get my car totaled out, does that mean I no longer have a claim and that, closes off my claim? But no, it does not. Just like I said, a claim can be separated into two parts, the property damage and the bodily injury. So you can focus on the property damage and wrap that up while still keeping your bodily injury claim open. And then as far as how you can get your car fixed after a wreck, usually there's two ways. If you have full coverage on your own insurance policy, that's something I usually recommend if you want to get your car fixed the quickest, especially if you have a good deductible there that's not too high, because reaching out to your insurance company is usually the fastest. They won't have to, find the other driver, get a statement, because that's just the coverage you have on your car to get it fixed, no matter who is responsible for a wreck. Now, that said, that doesn't mean that your insurance company will, put you down as at fault. They will still want to investigate. They will still want to find out. But if you want to get your car fixed as soon as possible, and you need it fixed as soon as possible, that's usually a good option. If you have that coverage, I always suggest reaching out there if you want that done as quickly as possible. And another question that comes up is, if I've been in a car wreck and I ask my car insurance company to fix my car or total it out, let's say there's, maybe a $500 or $1,000 deductible, you can still be reimbursed for that deductible. It just depends on your policy, what it says about that deductible. But then if down the road, your insurance company finishes their investigation, they get the police report, they see, hey, you were rear-ended, you got cut off, you got T-boned, you were not responsible for this wreck, they would ask the other person's insurance company to reimburse them for what they paid and to reimburse that deductible. So that's why I say it can be a good option if you just need to get your car fixed or repaired or totaled out as soon as possible, which is also the same way for the rental. Once again, if you've got rental car coverage on your policy, it's an option you can choose, but otherwise, the other car's insurance company, the one who's responsible for the wreck, can also provide a rental car for you. Now, once again, just like with, we talked about the injury part of the claim and how people can get frustrated when their claim takes so long, and when there's no real timeline for how long it's going to take, because it just depends on what your injuries are and how much treatment you need. Likewise, there can be frustration after a car wreck happens over, why does it take so long to get my car fixed? Why does it take so long to get a rental? And the common thing I see that holds up, that property damage part of the claim is when there's any kind of disagreement about how the wreck happened, or when you have a bad defendant. And what I mean when I say a bad defendant is, usually most people are honest. Most people, just want to go about their lives. Most people try to do the right thing. But then there are plenty of other drivers who do not. Plenty of drivers who, will lie about how a wreck happened, who will, try to save their own skin, try to save their premiums from going up, and who have no issue, making up a story. So let's say that you're in a car wreck, another car ran a red light, T-boned you. And so you file a claim with the other person's insurance company. And now, suddenly, some days later, that insurance company calls their driver and says, hey, we got this claim. Tell us what happened in the wreck. And then that person, that bad driver, will now start making up a story, will now start saying, oh, yes, I totally have the green light. They're the ones who hit me. Or, they're the ones who brake too suddenly, or any other story or excuse that they want to come up with, which is, once again, like what we talked about in the first half of the hour, why it's so important to get that police report, why it's so important to get those witness, statements, or at least get their name and number so that they can give a statement later, why it's so important to take those photos, because if it comes down to just your word against another driver, an insurance company is going to believe their driver more often than not. They're going to take their word for it on what happened, which is why you want to have some evidence of your own that can show, what actually happened, and doesn't need to just rely on, your statement or their statement. So getting back to the original question, why does that property damage, what can delay it? Why can it take so long? Is because in that example, insurance company calls their driver, and now their driver is saying a different story, something that puts them as not at fault. Well, then they got to get the police report. But let's say the police report, the police showed up and they weren't sure who caused the wreck, so they just put, unknown. These are the two statements the drivers gave me, but, I'm not sure who's telling the truth here. I just showed up after the fact, and this is the position I found the cars in. So then the insurance company is going to want to send out what they call a field adjuster, an adjuster who's actually going to go look at the cars, take photos, measure the cars, measure the damage. That field adjuster, might then say, like, okay, now looking at the damage on the vehicles, I can see that what our driver's telling us is not true. They were responsible for the wreck. And, that could clear up your claim, and that could get your property damage, claim moving and taken care of. But once again, it is just a process. It's an investigation. And so when you have a bad driver, a bad defendant who's not being truthful, or if they simply, they know they're at fault, so they don't answer their insurance company when they're calling, that can also delay an investigation. And I've had that happen where I had a client who was in a pretty bad wreck, pretty moderate, good damage. They got, slammed into the side of their car. And then it was a couple weeks later, and I'm following up with the insurance company saying, hey, this person, not at wreck, not at fault. I've got the police report. What is taking so long for you to give them a rental car? And it was a situation where their driver just wasn't responding, and they needed to get a statement from their driver so that they could say they investigated the claim and spoke to their insured driver first. And so that was an issue. That was, something where we had to push them to move forward with the claim, even when they couldn't get a statement from their driver. But it was still a delay, and it did take some time. So if you are in a car wreck and you're having trouble, getting an insurance company to reimburse you for a rental car, to get an adjuster out there to take a look at your car, once again, don't hesitate. Call the 888-888-8888. We do free consultations, so it never hurts to have an attorney just look at your case and see what they advise for you and what they suggest. Because you could have a situation where maybe you don't need an attorney for your case. Maybe there is an issue where it's not something we practice, but either we can tell you that, or we can maybe get you to someone who does practice that area of law who could help you. So don't hesitate. Call the 910-888-8888. And so once again, those are some of the things that can delay a property damage claim, that can, make it take some time to get a rental car, to get your car fixed, to get your car totaled out, which is why if you do have that coverage on your own insurance policy for rental car coverage, for, total loss, car repairs, if you're running into any kind of delay with the other insurance company, that's when I would suggest using that coverage that you have. Now, another thing to talk about is in the last bit of time we have, I want to talk about hit and run drivers. So very quickly, in a situation where, let's say, you're hit by somebody who has no driver's insurance, maybe the police catch them after the fact, they put them down the crash report and they say, hey, I just ran this person's plate, I ran their driver's license, they've got no insurance on their car. Or it's a situation where somebody, rear ends you or hits you and then they run off, which unfortunately I have seen happen way too many times. In fact, I just had one happen where a client was sitting at a light, got rear-ended quite significantly, pushed her into another car, and the man took off, fled the scene, once the kind of dust settled, but the police were able to track him down later. They were able to find his car, pull him back, get him on the crash report, but turned out he had no insurance. So if you're in a situation like that, you're in a hit and run, or you're just hit by a driver who has no insurance, a lot of people think, well, I guess I'm just out of luck. There's nothing I can do. But that is not true. In North Carolina, there is a guaranteed uninsured motorist coverage that can help protect you. And so this is coverage that's on your own policy. Anytime you get any kind of car insurance, it should come with uninsured motorist coverage. And this is exactly for these situations where if you've been hit by someone in a hit and run, or if you've been hit by someone who doesn't have their own insurance, that coverage can kick in and apply and help you out with your injuries. Now, using it can be a little bit different than just using someone else's insurance coverage, which is why, once again, it's a good idea to get an attorney involved, let them take a look at it, and let us give you some advice on how that would work and the best way to go about it. So once again, as always, if you have any questions about the injury side of your case, if you've got any questions about a car wreck case, a Social Security disability claim, or workers' compensation claim, don't hesitate. Call the 8s, 910-888-8888. We're here to answer any questions we can. We're here to guide you through the process, explain what it looks like, and just kind of, help be there so you're not alone during these times. Don't hesitate. Give us a call, 910-888-8888. Thanks so much for listening and for being here with us today.
I'm gonna move these days up. Let me talk up.